Teachings of Lord Caitanya by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. Introduction. Originally delivered as 5 morning lectures on Caitanya-caritāmṛta, the authoritative biography of Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu by Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja Gosvāmī, before the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, New York City, April 10th through 14th, 1967. The word Chaitanya means living force. As living entities, we can move, but a table cannot because it does not possess living force. Movement and activity may be considered to be signs or symptoms of the living force. Indeed, it may be said that there can be no activity without the living force. Although the living force is present in the material condition, it is not amrita, immortal. The words Caitanya-caritāmṛta, then, may be translated as the character of the living force in immortality. But how is this living force displayed immortally? It is not displayed by man or any other creature in this material universe, for none of us are immortal in these bodies. We possess the living force, we perform activities, and we are immortal by our nature and constitution. But the material condition into which we have been put does not allow our immortality to be displayed. It is stated in the Katha Upanishad that eternality and the living force belong both to ourselves and God. Although this is true in that both God and ourselves are immortal, there is a difference. As living entities, we perform many activities, but we have a tendency to fall down into material nature. God has no such tendency. Being all-powerful, He never comes under the control of material nature. Indeed, material nature is but one display of His inconceivable energies. On the ground, we may see only clouds in the sky, but if we fly above the clouds, we can see the sun shining. From the sky, skyscrapers and cities seem very tiny. Similarly, from God's position, this entire material creation is insignificant. The tendency of the conditioned living entity is to come down from the heights where everything can be seen in perspective. God, however, does not have this tendency. The Supreme Lord is not subject to fall down into illusion, Maya, any more than the sun is subject to fall beneath the clouds. Because the Supreme Lord is not subject to illusion, He is unconditioned. Because we, as finite living entities, are prone to fall into illusion, we are called conditioned. Impersonalist philosophers, Mayavadis, maintain that both the living entity and God Himself are under the control of Maya when they come into this material world. This may be true of the living entity, but it is not true of God, for in all instances the material energy is working under His direction. Those who consider the Supreme Lord to be subject to material conditioning are called fools by Krishna Himself in Bhagavad Gita. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanum ashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshvaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu should not be considered to be one of us. He is Krishna Himself, the supreme living entity, and as such He never comes under the cloud of Maya. Krishna, His expansions, and even His higher devotees never fall into the clutches of illusion. Lord Caitanya came to earth simply to preach Krishna Bhakti, love of Krishna. In other words, He is Lord Krishna Himself, teaching the living entities the proper way to approach Krishna. He is like a teacher who, seeing a student doing poorly, takes up a pencil and writes, saying, "Do it like this, ABC." By this, one must not foolishly think that the teacher is learning his ABCs. Although He appears in the guise of a devotee, we should always remember that Lord Caitanya is Krishna, God, Himself, teaching us how to become Krishna conscious, and we must study Him in that light. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna sets forth the highest religious principle in this way. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayashami ma sucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. This may seem to be a simple instruction to follow, but invariably our reaction is, oh, surrender? Give up? But I have so many responsibilities. And Maya, illusion, says to us, don't do it, or you'll be out of my clutches. Just stay in my clutches, and I'll kick you. It is a fact that we are constantly being kicked by Maya, just as the male ass is kicked in the face by the she-ass when he comes for sex. Similarly, cats and dogs are always fighting and whining when they have sex. These are tricks of nature. Even an elephant in the jungle is caught by the use of a trained she-elephant who leads him into a pit. Maya has many activities, and in the material world, her strongest shackle is the female. Of course, in actuality, we are neither male nor female, for these designations refer only to the outer dress, the body. We are all actually Krishna's servants. In conditioned life, however, we are shackled by the iron chains which take the form of beautiful women. Thus, every male is bound by sex life, and therefore, when one attempts to gain liberation from the material clutches, he must first learn to control the sex urge. Unrestricted sex puts one fully in the clutches of illusion. Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu officially renounced this illusion at the age of 24, although his wife was 16 and his mother 70, and he was the only male member of the family. Although he was a Brahmin and was not rich, he took sannyas, the renounced order of life, and thus extricated himself from family entanglement. If we wish to become fully Krishna conscious, we have to give up the shackles of Maya, or if we remain with Maya, we should live in such a way that we will not be subject to illusion. It is not necessary for one to abandon his family, for there were many householders amongst Lord Caitanya's closest devotees. What must be renounced is the propensity for material enjoyment. Although Lord Caitanya approved of a householder having regulated sex in marriage, he was very strict with those in the renounced order, and he even banished Junior Haridas for glancing lustfully at a young woman. Point is that one must take up a particular path and stick to it, obeying all the rules and regulations necessary for success in spiritual life. It was Lord Caitanya's mission that he teach the path of Krishna consciousness to all men, and thereby enable them to partake of the immortality of spiritual life. From Caitanya-caritāmṛta we learn how Caitanya taught people to become immortal, and thus the title may be properly translated as the immortal character of the living force. The supreme living force is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is also the supreme entity. There are innumerable living entities, and all of them are individual. This is very easy to understand. We are all individual in thought and desires, and the Supreme Lord is also an individual person. He is different, though, in that he is the leader, the one whom no one can excel. Amongst the created living entities, one being can excel another in one capacity or another. The Lord is an individual, just as the living entities are individual. But he is different in that he is the supreme individual. God is also infallible, and in Bhagavad Gita, he is addressed as Achyuta, which means he who never falls down. This is indicated because in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna had fallen into delusion, but Krishna had not. We often hear it said that God is infallible, and in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna states, Nanyam gunebhya kartaram yada drashtanupashyati gunebhyascha param veti madbhavam so digachati. When you see that there is nothing beyond these modes of nature in all activities, and that the Supreme Lord is transcendental to all these modes, then you can know my spiritual nature. Thus, we should not think that Krishna is overpowered by the material potency when he is in the material world. Krishna and his incarnations are not under the control of material nature. They are totally free. Indeed, in Srimad Bhagavatam, one who has a godly nature is actually defined as one who is not affected by the modes of material nature, although in material nature. If even a devotee can attain this freedom, then what to speak of the Supreme? The real question is how we can remain unpolluted by material contamination while in the material world. It was Rupa Goswami who explained that we can remain uncontaminated while in the world if we simply make it our ambition to serve Krishna. One may then justifiably ask, how can I serve? Obviously, this is not simply a matter of meditation, which is just an activity of the mind, but of practical work. Love of Krishna's service can only be attained by working for Krishna. In such work, we should leave no resource unused. Whatever is there, whatever we have, should be used for Krishna. We can use everything: typewriters, automobiles, airplanes, missiles, anything. If we simply speak to people about Krishna consciousness, we are also rendering service. If our minds, senses, speech, money, and energies are thus engaged in the service of Krishna, we cannot be considered to be existing in material nature. By virtue of spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness, we transcend the platform of material nature. It is a fact that Krishna, his expansions, and his devotees, that is, those who work for him, are not in material nature, although people with a poor fund of knowledge think that they are. Caitanya-caritāmṛta teaches that the spirit soul is immortal and that our activities in the spiritual world are also immortal. The Mayavadis, who hold to the view that the Absolute is impersonal and formless, contend that a realized soul has no need to talk. However, the Vaishnavas, who are devotees of Krishna, contend that one reaches the stage of realization, he really begins to talk. Previously, we only talked of nonsense, the Vaishnava says. Now let us begin our real talks of Krishna. The Mayavadis are also fond of using the example of the water pot, maintaining that when a pot is not filled with water, it makes a sound, but that when it is filled, it makes no sound. But are we water pots? How can we be compared to them? A good analogy utilizes as many similarities between two objects as possible. A water pot is not an active living force, but we are. Ever-silent meditation may be adequate for a water pot, but not for us. Indeed, when one has realized he has so much to say about Krishna, 24 hours in a day is not sufficient. It is the fool who is celebrated as long as he does not speak, for when he breaks his silence, his lack of knowledge is exposed. Caitanya-caritāmṛta shows that there are many wonderful things to discover by glorifying the Supreme. In the beginning of Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja Gosvāmī writes, I offer my respects to my spiritual masters. He uses the plural here to indicate the disciplic succession. It is not that he offers obeisances to his spiritual master alone, but to the whole parampara, the chain of disciplic succession beginning with Lord Krishna himself. Thus the Guru is addressed in the plural to show the author's highest respect for all the Vaishnavas. After offering obeisances to the disciplic succession, the author pays obeisances to all the other devotees, God-brothers, the expansions of Godhead, and the first manifestation of Krishna's energy. Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu, sometimes called Krishna Caitanya, is the embodiment of all of these. He is God, Guru, devotee, and the expansion of God. As his associate, Nityananda, he is the first manifestation of energy. As Advaita, he is an incarnation. As Gadadhar, he is the internal potency. And as Srivas, he is the marginal living entity. Thus, Krishna should not be thought of as being alone, but should be considered as eternally existing with all his manifestations, as described by Ramanujacharya. In Vishishtadvaita philosophy, God's energies, expansions, and incarnations are considered to be oneness in diversity. In other words, God is not separate from all these. Everything together is God. Actually, Caitanya-caritāmṛta is not intended for the novice, for it is the postgraduate study of spiritual knowledge. Ideally, one begins with and advances through Srimad Bhagavatam to the Caitanya-caritāmṛta. Although all these great scriptures are on the absolute level, for the sake of comparative study, Caitanya-caritāmṛta is considered to be on the highest platform. Every verse in it is perfectly composed. Indeed, Lord Caitanya and Nityananda are compared to the sun and moon in that they dissipate the darkness of the material world. In this instance, both the sun and moon have risen together, and it is proper to offer obeisances directly to Lord Caitanya and Nityananda. In the Western world, where the glories of Lord Caitanya are relatively unknown, one may inquire, who is Krishna Caitanya? The scriptural conclusion in answer to that question is that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, in the Upanishads, the Supreme Absolute Truth is described in an impersonal way, but the personal aspect of the Absolute Truth is mentioned in the Ishopanishad, where, after a description of the all-pervading, we find the following verse: Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pihitam mukam tatwam pushan apavranu satyadharmaya drishtaye. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. Sri Ishopanishad, Mantra 15. The impersonalists do not have the power to go beyond the effulgence of God and arrive at the personality from whom this effulgence is emanating. At the end of Ishopanishad, however, there is a hymn to the personality of Godhead. It is not that the impersonal Brahman is denied. It is also described, but that Brahman is considered to be the glaring effulgence of the body of Chaitanya. In other words, Krishna Chaitanya is the basis of the impersonal Brahman. It is also stated by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita that the impersonal Brahman rests on him, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. The Paramatma or Supersoul, which is present within the heart of every living entity and within every atom of the universe, is but the partial representation of Chaitanya. Krishna Chaitanya is therefore the basis of Brahman and the Supreme Personality of Godhead as well. As the Supreme, he is full in 6 opulences: wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. In short, we should know that he is Krishna, God, and nothing is equal to or greater than him. There is no superior to be conceived. He is the Supreme Person. It was Rupa Goswami, a confidential devotee, taught for more than 10 days continuously by Lord Caitanya, who wrote, Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Caitanya Namne Gaura Tushe Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is more magnanimous than any other avatar, even Krishna himself, because he is bestowing freely what no one else has ever given: pure love of Krishna. It is not that Chaitanya teaches a long and elaborate path to God realization. He is completely spiritual, and he begins from the point of surrender to Krishna. He does not pursue the paths of Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga or Hatha Yoga, but begins at the end of material existence, at the point where one gives up all material attachment. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna began his teachings by distinguishing the soul from matter, and in the 18th chapter concluded at the point where the soul surrenders to him in devotion. The Mayavadis would have all talk cease there, but at that point the real discussion only begins. It is the Vedanta Sutra which begins, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now, let us begin to inquire about the Supreme Absolute Truth. Rupa Goswami thus praises Chaitanya as the most munificent incarnation of all, for he gives the greatest gift by indicating the highest form of devotional service. In other words, he answers the most important inquiries that anyone can make. There are different stages of devotional service and God realization. Strictly speaking, anyone who accepts the existence of God is situated in devotional service. To acknowledge that God is great is something, but not much. Chaitanya, preaching as an Acharya, a great teacher, taught that we can enter into a relationship with God and actually become God's friend. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna showed Arjuna his universal form because Arjuna was his very dear friend. Upon seeing Krishna as the Lord of the universes, however, Arjuna actually asked Krishna to forgive the familiarity of his friendship. Chaitanya goes beyond this point. Through Lord Caitanya, we can become friends with Krishna, and there is no limit to this friendship. We can become friends of Krishna not in awe or adoration, but in complete freedom. We can even relate to God as his Father. This is not only the philosophy of Caitanya-caritāmṛta, but of Srimad Bhagavatam as well. There are no other literatures in the world in which God is treated as the son of a devotee. Usually God is seen as the Almighty Father who supplies the demands of His sons. The great devotees, however, sometimes treat God as a son in their execution of devotional service. The son demands and the father supplies, and in supplying Krishna, the devotee becomes like a father. Instead of taking from God, we give to God. It was in this relationship that Krishna's mother, Yashoda, told the Lord, "Here, eat this or you'll die. Eat nicely." In this way, Krishna, although the proprietor of everything, depends on the mercy of his devotee. This is a uniquely high level of friendship in which the devotee actually believes himself to be the father of Krishna. However, Lord Chaitanya's greatest gift was his teaching that Krishna can be actually treated as one's lover. In this relationship, the Lord is so much attached that he expresses his inability to reciprocate. Krishna was so obliged to the gopis, the cowherd girls of Vrndavan, that he felt unable to return their love. "I cannot repay your love," he told them. "I have no more assets to return." Thus, devotional service is performed on this excellent platform, and knowledge of the devotee's relationship to Krishna as lover and beloved was given by Chaitanya Mahāprabhu. It was never given by any previous incarnation or Acharya. Thus, Rupa Goswami wrote of Chaitanya, "Devotional service itself is the highest platform, the glorious platform which you have contributed. You are Krishna in a yellow complexion, and you are Sachinandana, the son of Mother Sachi. Those who hear Caitanya-caritāmṛta will keep you in their hearts. It will be easy to understand Krishna through you." Thus, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to deliver Krishna. His method of deliverance was not meditation, fruitive activities, or scriptural study, but love. We have often heard the phrase, love of Godhead. How far this love of Godhead can actually be developed can be learned from the Vaishnava philosophy. Theoretical knowledge of love of God can be found in many places and in many scriptures. But what that love of Godhead actually is and how it is developed can be found in Vaishnava literatures. It is the unique and highest development of love of God that is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even in this material world, we can have a little sense of love. How is this possible? It is due to the love which is found in the Godhead. Whatever we find within our experience within this conditional life is situated in the Supreme Lord, who is the ultimate source of everything. In our original relationship with the Supreme Lord, there is real love, and that love is reflected pervertedly through material conditions. Our real love is continuous and unending, but because that love is reflected pervertedly in this material world, it lacks continuity and is inebriating. If we want real transcendental love, we have to transfer our love to the supreme lovable object, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. In material consciousness, we are trying to love that which is not at all lovable. We give our love to dogs and cats, running the risk that at the time of death we may think of them and consequently take birth in a family of cats or dogs. Thus, love that does not have Krishna as its object leads downward. It is not that Krishna or God is something obscure or something that only a few chosen people can attain. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu informs us that in every country and in every scripture, there is some hint of love of Godhead. Unfortunately, no one knows what love of Godhead actually is. The Vedic scriptures, however, are different in that they can direct the individual in the proper way to love God. Other scriptures do not give information on how one can love God, nor do they actually define or describe what or who the Godhead actually is. Although they officially promote love of Godhead, they have no idea how to execute it. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives a practical demonstration of how to love God in a conjugal relationship. Taking the part of Radharani, Chaitanya tries to love Krishna as Radharani loved him. Krishna was always amazed by Radharani's love. "How does Radharani give me such pleasure?" he would ask. In order to study Radharani, Krishna lived in her role and tried to understand himself. This is the secret of Lord Chaitanya's incarnation. Chaitanya is Krishna, but he has taken the mode or role of Radharani to show us how to love Krishna. Thus he is addressed, "I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, who is absorbed in Radharani's thoughts. This brings up the question of who Radharani is and what Radha Krishna is. Actually, Radha Krishna is the exchange of love. This is not ordinary love. Krishna has immense potencies, of which three are principal: internal, external, and marginal. In the internal potency, there are three divisions: Samvit, Hladini, and Sandhini. The Hladini potency is the pleasure potency. All living entities have this pleasure-seeking potency, for all beings are trying to have pleasure. This is the very nature of the living entity. At present, we are trying to enjoy our pleasure potency by means of the body in this material condition. By bodily contact, we are attempting to derive pleasure from material sense objects. We should not think, however, that Krishna, who is always spiritual, tries to seek pleasure on this material plane like us. Krishna describes the material universe as a non-permanent place full of miseries. Why, then, would he seek pleasure in the material form? He is the Supersoul, the Supreme Spirit, and his pleasure is beyond the material conception. In order to learn how Krishna's pleasure can be obtained, we must read the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Krishna's pleasure potency is displayed in his pastimes with Radharani and the damsels of Braja. Unfortunately, unintelligent people turn at once to the sports of Krishna in the Dashama Skanda, the 10th canto. Krishna's embracing Radharani or his dancing with the cowherd girls in the rasa dance are generally not understood by ordinary men because they consider these pastimes in the light of mundane lust. They incorrectly think that Krishna is like themselves and that he embraces the gopis just as an ordinary man embraces a young girl. Some people thus become interested in Krishna because they think that his religion allows indulgence in sex. This is not Krishna Bhakti, love of Krishna, but Prakrita Sahaja, materialistic lust. In order to avoid such errors, we should understand what Radha Krishna actually is. Radha and Krishna display their pastimes through Krishna's internal energy. The pleasure potency of Krishna's internal energy is a most difficult subject matter, and unless one understands what Krishna is, he cannot understand it. Krishna does not take any pleasure in this material world, but he has a pleasure potency. Because we are part and parcel of Krishna, the pleasure potency is within us also, but we are trying to exhibit that pleasure potency in matter. Krishna, however, does not make such a vain attempt. The object of Krishna's pleasure potency is Radharani, and he exhibits his potency or his energy as Radharani and then engages in loving affairs with her. In other words, Krishna does not take pleasure in this external energy, but exhibits his internal energy, his pleasure potency, as Radharani. Thus, Krishna manifests himself as Radharani in order to exhibit his internal pleasure potency. Of the many extensions, expansions, and incarnations of the Lord, this pleasure potency is the foremost and chief. It is not that Radharani is separate from Krishna. Radharani is also Krishna, for there is no difference between the energy and the energetic. Without energy, there is no meaning to the energetic, and without the energetic, there is no energy. Similarly, without Radha, there is no meaning to Krishna, and without Krishna, there is no meaning to Radha. Because of this, the Vaishnava philosophy, first of all, pays obeisances to and worships the internal pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the Lord and his potency are always referred to as Radha Krishna. Similarly, those who worship the name of Narayan, first of all, utter the name of Lakshmi as Lakshmi Narayan. Similarly, those who worship Lord Ram, first of all, utter the name of Sita. In any case, Sita Ram, Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, the potency always comes first. Radha and Krishna are one, and when Krishna desires to enjoy pleasure, he manifests himself as Radharani. The spiritual exchange of love between Radha and Krishna is the actual display of the internal pleasure potency of Krishna. Although we speak of when Krishna desires, just when he did desire we cannot say. We only speak in this way because in conditional life we take it that everything has a beginning. However, in the absolute or spiritual life, there is neither beginning nor end. Yet in order to understand that Radha and Krishna are one and that they also become divided, the question, when, automatically comes to mind. When Krishna desired to enjoy his pleasure potency, he manifested himself in the separate form of Radharani. And when he wanted to understand himself through the agency of Radha, he united with Radharani, and that unification is called Lord Caitanya. Why did Krishna assume the form of Chaitanya Mahāprabhu? It is explained that Krishna desired to know the glory of Radha's love. Why is she so much in love with me? Krishna asked. What is my special qualification that attracts her so? And what is the actual way in which she loves me? It seems strange that Krishna, as the Supreme, should be attracted by anyone's love. We search after the love of a woman or a man because we are imperfect and lack something. The love of a woman, that potency and pleasure, is absent in man, and therefore a man wants a woman. But this is not the case with Krishna, who is full in himself. Thus, Krishna expressed surprise. Why am I attracted by Radharani? And when Radharani feels my love, what is she actually feeling? In order to taste the essence of that loving affair, Krishna appeared just as the moon appears on the horizon of the sea. Just as the moon was produced by the churning of the sea, by the churning of spiritual love affairs, the moon of Chaitanya Mahāprabhu appeared. Indeed, Chaitanya's complexion was golden, just like the moon. Although this is figurative language, it conveys the meaning behind the appearance of Chaitanya Mahāprabhu. The full significance of his appearance will be explained in later chapters. The manifestations of the Supreme are also explained in Caitanya-caritāmṛta. After offering respects to Lord Caitanya, Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja next offers them to Nityananda. He explains that Nityananda is a manifestation of Sankarshan, who is the origin of the Mahavishnu. Krishna's first manifestation is as Balaram and then Sankarshan, and after Sankarshan he is manifested as Pradyumna. In this way, so many expansions take place. Although there are many expansions, Lord Sri Krishna is the origin, as confirmed in Brahma Samhita. He is like the original candle from which many thousands and millions of candles are lit. Although any number of candles can be lighted, the original candle still retains its identity as the origin. In this way, Krishna expands himself into so many lights, and all these expansions are called Vishnu Tattva. Vishnu is a large light, and we are all small lights, but all are expansions of Krishna. When it is necessary to create the material universe, Vishnu expands himself as the Mahavishnu. This Mahavishnu lies down on the causal ocean and breathes all the universes from his nostrils. Thus, from the Mahavishnu and the causal ocean, all the universes spring, and all these universes float in the causal ocean. In this regard, there is the story of Vamana who, when he took 3 steps, stuck his foot through the covering of the universe. Water from the causal ocean flowed through the hole which his foot made, and it is said that that flow of water became the river Ganges. Therefore, the Ganges is accepted as the most sacred water of Vishnu and is worshipped by all Hindus from the Himalayas down to the Bay of Bengal. That Mahavishnu who lies in the causal ocean is actually an expansion of Balaram, who is Krishna's first expansion, and in the Vrndavan pastimes as the brother of Krishna. In the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, the word Rama refers to Balaram. Since Nityananda is an expansion of Balaram, Ram also refers to Lord Nityananda. Thus, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram addresses not only Krishna and Balaram, but Lord Caitanya and Nityananda as well. The subject matter of Caitanya-caritāmṛta primarily deals with what is beyond this material creation. The cosmic material expansion is called Maya because it has no eternal existence. Because it is sometimes manifested and sometimes not manifested, it is regarded as illusory. But beyond this temporary manifestation, there is a higher nature as indicated in Bhagavad Gita. Parastasmat tu bhavanyo vyakto vyaktat sanatana yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati. Yet there is another nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. That supreme nature is beyond the manifested or vyakta and unmanifested or avyakta. This superior nature, which is beyond both creation and annihilation, is the living force which is manifest in the bodies of all living entities. The body itself is composed of inferior nature, matter, but it is the superior nature that is moving the body. The symptom of that superior nature is consciousness. Thus, in the spiritual world, where everything is composed of the superior nature, everything is conscious. In the material world, inanimate objects are not conscious. But in the spiritual world, this is not so. There, a table is conscious, the land is conscious, the trees are conscious. Everything is conscious. It is not possible to imagine how far this material manifestation extends. In the material world, everything is calculated by some imagination or by some imperfect method. But Vedic literatures give information of what lies beyond the material universe. Those who believe in experimental knowledge may doubt the Vedic conclusions, for they cannot even calculate how far this universe is extended, nor can they reach far into the universe itself. It is not possible to obtain information of anything beyond this material nature by experimental means. That which is beyond our power of conception is called achintya, inconceivable. It is useless to argue or speculate about what is inconceivable. If it is truly inconceivable, it is not subject to speculation or experimentation. Our energy is limited, and our sense perception is limited. Therefore, we must rely on the Vedic conclusions regarding that subject matter which is inconceivable. Knowledge of the superior nature must be accepted without argument. How is it possible to argue about something to which we have no access? The method for understanding transcendental subject matter is given by Lord Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna tells Arjuna at the beginning of the 4th chapter, Imam Vishvasvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivishvan Manave Praha Manur Ikshvakave Bravit. I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivishvan, and Vivishvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. This is the method of parampara, or disciplic succession. Similarly, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna imparted knowledge into the heart of Brahma, the first created creature within the universe. Brahma imparted those lessons to his disciple Narada, and Narada imparted that knowledge to his disciple Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva imparted it to Madhvacharya, and from Madhvacharya the knowledge comes down to Madhavendra Puri, to Ishvara Puri, and from him to Chaitanya Mahāprabhu. One may ask that if Chaitanya Mahāprabhu is Krishna himself, then why did he need a spiritual master? Of course, he did not need a spiritual master, but because he was playing the role of Acharya, one who teaches by example, he accepted a spiritual master. Even Krishna himself accepted a spiritual master, for that is the system. In this way, the Lord sets the example for men. We should not think, however, that the Lord takes a spiritual master because he is in want of knowledge. He is simply stressing the importance of accepting the disciplic succession. The knowledge of that disciplic succession actually comes from the Lord himself, and if the knowledge descends unbroken, it is perfect. Although we may not be in touch with the original personality who first imparted the knowledge, we may receive the same knowledge through this process of transmission. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that Krishna, the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, transmitted transcendental knowledge into the heart of Brahma. This, then, is one way knowledge is received, through the heart. Thus, there are two processes by which one may receive knowledge. One depends upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated as the Supersoul within the heart of all living entities, and the other depends upon the Guru or Spiritual Master, who is an expansion of Krishna. Thus, Krishna transmits information both from within and from without. We simply have to receive it. If knowledge is received in this way, it doesn't matter whether it is inconceivable or not. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a great deal of information given about the Vaikuntha planetary systems, which are beyond the material universe. Similarly, a great deal of inconceivable information is given in Caitanya-caritāmṛta. Any attempt to arrive at this information through experimental knowledge is not possible. The knowledge simply has to be accepted. According to the Vedic method, Shabda, or transcendental sound, is regarded as evidence. Sound is very important in Vedic understanding, for if it is pure, it is accepted as authoritative. Even in the material world, we accept a great deal of information which is sent thousands of miles by telephone or radio. In this way, we also accept sound as evidence in our daily lives. Although we cannot see the informant, we accept his information as valid on the basis of sound. Sound vibration, then, is very important in the transmission of Vedic knowledge. The Vedas inform us that beyond this cosmic manifestation, there are extensive planets and the spiritual sky. This material manifestation is regarded as only a small portion of the total creation. The material manifestation includes not only this universe, but innumerable others as well. But all the material universes combined comprise only one fraction of the total creation. The majority of the creation is situated in the spiritual sky. In that sky, innumerable planets float, and these are called Vaikuntha Lokas. In every Vaikuntha Loka, Narayan presides in the form of his four-armed expansions, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva. As stated before, the material universes are manifested by the Lord in the form of Mahavishnu. Just as a husband and wife combine to beget offspring, the Mahavishnu combines with his wife Maya, or material nature. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna states, Sarva yonishu konteya, mortaya sambhavantiya. Tasham brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. Vishnu impregnated Maya, or material nature, simply by glancing at her. This is the spiritual method. Materially, we are limited to impregnate by only one particular part of our body. But the Supreme Lord, Krishna or Mahavishnu, can impregnate any part by any part. Simply by glancing, the Lord can conceive countless living entities in the womb of material nature. The Brahma Samhita also confirms that the spiritual body of the Supreme Lord is so powerful that any part of that body can perform the functions of any other part. We can only touch with our hands or skin, but Krishna can touch just by glancing. We can only see with our eyes. We cannot touch or smell with them. Krishna, however, can smell and also eat with his eyes. When foodstuffs are offered to Krishna, we don't see him eating, but he eats simply by glancing at the food. We cannot imagine how things work in the spiritual world where everything is spiritual. It is not that Krishna does not eat or that we imagine that he eats. He actually eats, but his eating is different from ours. Our eating process will be similar to his when we are completely on the spiritual platform. On that platform, every part of the body can act on behalf of any other part. Vishnu does not require anything in order to create. He does not require the goddess Lakshmi in order to give birth to Brahma, for Brahma is born from a lotus flower which grows from the navel of Vishnu. The goddess Lakshmi sits at the feet of Vishnu and serves him. In this material world, sex is required to produce children. But in the spiritual world, one can produce as many children as he likes without having to take help from his wife. Because we have no experience with spiritual energy, we think that Brahma's birth from the navel of Vishnu is simply a fictional story. We are not aware that spiritual energy is so powerful that it can do anything and everything. Material energy is dependent on certain laws, but spiritual energy is fully independent. Brahma is born from the navel of Garbhodakshai Vishnu, who is but a partial manifestation of the Mahavishnu. Countless universes reside like seeds within the skin pores of the Mahavishnu, and when he exhales, they are all manifest. In the material world, we have no experience of such a thing. But we do experience a perverted reflection in the phenomenon of perspiration. We cannot imagine, however, the duration of one breath of the Mahavishnu, for within one breath, all of the universes are created and annihilated. Lord Brahma only lives for the duration of one breath, and according to our time scale, 4,320,000,000 years constitute only 12 hours of Brahma, and Brahma lives 100 of his years. Yet the whole life of Brahma is contained within one breath of the Mahavishnu. Thus, it is not possible for us to imagine the breathing power of the Supreme Lord. That Mahavishnu is but a partial manifestation of Krishna. Thus, Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja Gosvāmī discusses Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu as Sri Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Lord Nityananda as Balaram, the first expansion of Krishna. Advaita-Ācārya, another principal disciple of Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu's, is accepted as an expansion of the Mahavishnu. Thus, Advaita-Ācārya is also the Lord, or more precisely, an expansion of the Lord. The word Advaita means non-dual, and his name is such because he is non-different from the Supreme Lord. He is also called Acharya, teacher, because he disseminated Krishna consciousness. In this way, he is just like Caitanya Mahāprabhu. Although Caitanya is Sri Krishna himself, he appears as a devotee to teach people in general how to love Krishna. Similarly, Advaita-Ācārya appeared just to distribute the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. Thus, he is also the Lord incarnated as a devotee. Krishna is manifested in 5 different expansions, and he and all his associates appear as devotees of the Supreme Lord in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Nityananda, Advaita-Ācārya, Gadadhar, Srivas, and others. In all cases, Caitanya Mahaprabhu is the source of energy for all his devotees. Since this is the case, if we take shelter of Caitanya Mahaprabhu for the successful execution of Krishna consciousness, we are sure to make progress. One devotional song by Narottam Das Thakur states, "My dear Lord Caitanya, please have mercy upon me. There is no one who is as merciful as you. My plea is most urgent because your mission is to deliver fallen souls, and no one is more fallen than I. I beg priority." The author of Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja Gosvāmī, was an inhabitant of Vrndavan and a great devotee. He had been living with his family in Katwa, a small town in the district of Burdwan in Bengal. His family also worshipped Radha Krishna, and once when there was some misunderstanding amongst his family about devotional service, Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja was advised by Nityananda Prabhu in a dream to leave home and go to Vrindavan. Although he was very old, he started out that very night and went to live in Vrindavan. While he was there, he met some of the Goswamis, principal disciples of Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu. He was requested to write Caitanya-caritāmṛta by the devotees of Vrindavan. Although he began this work at a very old age, by the grace of Lord Caitanya, he finished it. Today it remains the most authoritative book on Caitanya's philosophy and life. When Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja Gosvāmī was living in Vrindavan, there were not very many temples. At that time, Madan Mohan, Govindaji, and Gopinath were the 3 principal temples. As a resident of Vrindavan, he offered his respects to the deities in these temples and requested God's favor. "My progress in spiritual life is very slow, so I'm asking your help." In Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Kṛṣṇadāsa first offers his obeisances to Madan Mohan Vigraha, the deity who can help us progress in Krishna consciousness. In the execution of Krishna consciousness, our first business is to know Krishna and our relationship with him. To know Krishna is to know oneself, and to know oneself is to know one's relationship with Krishna. Since this relationship can be learned by worshipping Madan Mohan Vigraha, Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja Gosvāmī first establishes his relationship with him. When this is established, Kṛṣṇadāsa begins to worship the functional deity, Govinda. Govinda resides eternally in Vrindavan. In the spiritual world of Vrindavan, the buildings are made of touchstone. The cows are known as Sarabi cows, givers of abundant milk, and the trees are known as wish-fulfilling trees, for they yield whatever one desires. In Vrindavan, Krishna herds the Sarabi cows, and he is worshipped by hundreds and thousands of gopis, cowherd girls, who are all goddesses of fortune. When Krishna descends to the material world, this same Vrindavan descends, just as an entourage accompanies an important personage. Because when Krishna comes, his land also comes, Vrindavan is not considered to exist in the material world. Therefore, devotees take shelter of the Vrindavan in India, for it is considered to be a replica of the original Vrindavan. Although one may complain that no kalpavriksha, wish-fulfilling trees, exist there, when the Goswamis were there, the kalpavriksha were present. It is not that one can simply go to such a tree and make demands. One must first become a devotee. The Goswamis would live under a tree for one night only, and the trees would satisfy all their desires. For the common man, this may all seem very wonderful, but as one makes progress in devotional service, all this can be realized. Vrindavan is actually experienced as it is by persons who have stopped trying to derive pleasure from material enjoyment. When will my mind become cleansed of all hankering for material enjoyment, so I will be able to see Vrindavan? One great devotee asks. The more Krishna conscious we become and the more we advance, the more everything is revealed as spiritual. Thus, Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja Gosvāmī considered Vrindavan in India to be as good as the Vrindavan in the spiritual sky. And in Caitanya-caritāmṛta, he describes Radharani and Krishna as seated beneath a wish-fulfilling tree in Vrindavan on a throne decorated with valuable jewels. There, Krishna's dear friends, the cowherd boys and the gopis, serve Radha and Krishna by singing, dancing, offering betel nuts and refreshments, and decorating their lordships with flowers. Even today in India, people decorate thrones and recreate this scene during the month of July. Generally, at that time, people go to Vrindavan to offer their respects to the deities there. Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja Gosvāmī maintains that the Radha and Krishna deities show us how to serve Radha and Krishna. The Madan Mohan deities simply establish that, I am your eternal servant. With Govinda, however, there is actual acceptance of service, and therefore he is called the functional deity. The Gopinath deity is Krishna as master and proprietor of the gopis. He attracted all the gopis, or cowherd girls, by the sound of his flute, and when they came, he danced with them. These activities are all described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. These gopis were childhood friends of Krishna, and they were all married, for in India, the girls are married by the age of 12. The boys, however, are not married before 18, so Krishna, who was 15 or 16 at the time, was not married. Nonetheless, he called these girls from their homes and invited them to dance with him. That dance is called the Rasa Leela dance, and it is the most elevated of all the Vrindavan pastimes. Krishna is, therefore, called Gopinath, because he is the beloved master of the gopis. Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja Gosvāmī petitions the blessings of Lord Gopinath. May that Gopinath, the master of the gopis, Krishna, bless you. May you become blessed by Gopinath. Just as Krishna attracted the gopis by the sweet sound of his flute, the author of Caitanya-caritāmṛta prays that he will also attract the reader's mind by his transcendental vibration. It is the purpose of this book, Teachings of Lord Caitanya, to transmit the essence of that vibration in an easily readable summary study.
Thank you for listening. For more, click here.